Hi model builders, I hope you're having a wonderful day. In this video we're going to fill the seams and do the main painting of Maverick's F-18. Seams are the line where two parts come together. All models have seams, with the higher quality models typically having better seams. Seams usually result in gaps or steps. The size of these gaps and steps are determined by the quality of the model, by the skill of the builder in preparing and fitting the parts prior to gluing, and the skill in which the glue is applied and the parts aligned during the gluing process. In the worst case, the seams will be very visible after the paint is applied and usually causes the model to look less realistic. The highest level model builders apply great skill and much hard work to make these seams completely disappear. For me, filling gaps and sanding steps is tedious and not very fun, so I try to do enough to make the model look okay, but I don't strive for perfection. Every model builder will decide for themselves what level of seam correction is right for them. Seam filler is required for this job. There are many kinds out there. One of my favorites is Vallejo plastic putty. It is easy to apply and the excess can be easily wiped away with a damp cloth or Q-tip, which eliminates much of the sanding. But for this build, I'm going to try this DAP dry deck spackle I got from Walmart. It can be thinned with water to get a more spreadable consistency, and the excess can be cleaned with a damp cloth before it dries. I'm really curious to see how it works out. I've been experimenting a little bit with the DAP dry deck spackling. I mixed it with a little bit of water and I got it to a pretty good consistency, and I actually filled a seam right here, and it's pink when it goes in and it turns white as it dries, and it didn't really shrink that much. I think it's a pretty good fill. I'm going to put a little bit more later and sand it down, but I'm going to apply some now to this seam. I'm going to use my toothpick to try to get some in there, like that. Then I have a little bit of a wet napkin here that I can use to wipe away some of this excess. Actually, I'm going to use my finger for that for now. Like that. And then use the paper towel to wipe away just a little bit on the edges here, like that and like that. And if I get the lighting right here, you can see that there's a little bit in the seam, and we'll let it dry and see what it looks like. So far, the spackle seems to be working decently well. You can see the seams are pretty well filled. It's not smooth. I think I'm going to need another coat on top of this, but once I build it up properly and then give it a light sanding with 3000 grit, I think it might give acceptable results. So I'm going to keep going with this, and we'll see how it turns out with more coats and more sanding. I completed the seam filling and now I'm ready for painting. The DAP dry decks worked really well for filling gaps and crevices between two level surfaces. I could spread it with my fingertip and easily wipe both sides with a damp paper towel, leaving a nice smooth filler only in the gap. It didn't work as well for getting an even transition in the step between two uneven surfaces, but then nothing else I tried is much better. In earlier builds, I've tried Vallejo plastic putty, squadron green putty, and Bondo glazing and spot putty. I think it comes down to the fact that I have to get better at fitting and prepping the joints and eliminating steps before gluing. I admit that fixing seams is not too fun for me. For me, it's like peeling potatoes, chopping vegetables, or trimming fat. It's an important step, but not as fun as adding seasonings or searing a T-bone in butter. Painting is my favorite part of model building. It's the part that really brings the model to life, and it allows me to express my individual style. I think the most important thing in painting is there is no right or wrong way to do it. It's your model, and if it looks right to you, that's all that really matters. There are two basic elements to model painting. First is the overall color scheme, which in most cases replicates the factory fresh condition. Second is weathering, which tries to make the model look more realistic by adding stains, fading, and wear. The instructions usually provide the exact colors and patterns for the basic color scheme. For the FA-18 Super Hornet, The basic scheme is light ghost gray on the lower and side surfaces and dark ghost gray on the top surfaces. The kit instructions show the dark gray covering the entire top surface with a pretty noticeable contrast between the light and dark grays. But the kit box photos and most photos of actual planes show the upper dark areas as blotches that are not much darker than the light gray. Most actual planes have the dark gray faded from sun, moisture, heat, and wear. I will try to get this faded look with washes and maybe some dry brushing. Weathering is a highly individual art form, and you can see many variations. Weathering consists of panel line washes and shading, rivet washes, gunpowder and exhaust stains, oil and fluid leaks, worn, chipped, or faded paint, rust, scuff marks, burnt metal, etc. The type and extent of weathering depends on how much wear you want to show on the plane. A bird fresh from the factory will have much less weathering than a plane in combat. The model builder can make the plane anything from brand new to almost unflyable and anything in between. In addition to photos of actual planes, I also look at trucks, heavy machinery, outdoor objects like dumpsters and gutters to get ideas of how objects get stained and worn. Weathering is so fun for me. My main problem is I tend to overdo it. For Maverick's FA-18, I will try to apply enough weathering to make it look rugged, but not overdo it. After all, this plane is also a movie star. I got the wheel wells and cockpit masked off. I got the stone gray spray paint. Been shaking it for a couple minutes and I should be ready to start. Okay, the first coat doesn't give full coverage. I'm going to let it dry and mist on another coat in a few minutes. I applied 4 light coats of the stone gray spray paint, and the good news is the shade and tone of the gray is, I think, a pretty good match with the photos. But the bad news is the top of the plane has this very weird grainy texture. So I want to show you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly, and this is truly ugly. I don't know what caused this. I've never seen this ever before. Afterwards, I sprayed the horizontal stabilizers, and those came out pretty good. So I'm going to have to try to sand this top surface, and hopefully I can get it smooth enough to keep going. Here's a progress report on repairing the horrible paint job that I did. I started off with some 600 grit sandpaper to remove the worst of the roughness. Then I wiped it down with 91% isopropyl alcohol. And it seems to be working. It's a lot smoother now. I can still see the panel lines and rivets, so I think it'll be good for the wash. I'm going to keep going with some 600 grit, then follow with some 3000 grit, and then a final alcohol wipe, and then we'll see what happens from there. I kept sanding the paint with 600 grit, then 3000 grit, then I rubbed it with an old pair of jeans. Finally, I wiped it down with a moist paper towel. Sometimes mistakes and problems happen, but it's not the end of the world. I just take a deep breath and try to think of a solution, and usually it works out in the end. The next step is to mask and paint the black portions of the fuselage. While waiting for daylight to film the painting of the black portion of the fuselage, I decided to give the stone gray spray paint another try. So I applied a couple coats to the horizontal stabilizers, and this time it came out pretty good. So then I tried the landing gear doors, and those also came out pretty good. I don't know why it's coming out better this time, but I'm not going to complain. And then I used white primer to paint the insides of the gear doors, and that also came out pretty good. By the way, I'm painting these on the sprue trees because it's just a lot easier that way. If I have to touch them up later when I cut them off the trees, I'll do that with a brush. Then I painted the landing gear with white primer. Here's the nose gear. And finally, I painted the wheels with white primer. Later on, I'll mask the wheels off and spray paint the tires with black primer. Today I'm going to paint the dark gray blotches on the horizontal stabilizers. I'm painting inside the garage today because it's windy outside. I made this paper template that is going to give me the shape of the blotches. It's a little bit offset from the surface, so I get hopefully a feathered edge. And I got the paint. I've been shaking it for a couple minutes, so let's see how this goes. I'm doing the stabilizers first so that if there's a problem, it's a lot easier to fix the stabilizer than the fuselage. But here's what it looks like. We'll see what it looks like after it dries. I'm pretty happy with the way the dark gray blotches turned out. The contrast is a little bit darker than I would have hoped, and it's a glossy finish, but I think I can take care of those with some light sanding and some washes. When it comes to weathering, I usually prefer some variation between the left and right sides. I just think it looks more realistic, but that's just my personal preference. I also painted the vertical fins with black primer and it came out okay. So the next step is to paint the black portions of the fuselage. I got everything masked off with tape and saran wrap. So now I'm ready to paint the black portion of the fuselage. Got my black primer here. See how it goes. Okay, the first light coat is on. I'm going to let it dry and then apply a second light coat. I painted the black portion of the fuselage and it was pretty straightforward and easy, no issues or anything like that. So now I'm ready to paint the dark gray blotches on the wings. So I created this template and I have these rolls of tape to create the standoff of the template from the wing surface to create the feathered edges. So basically I'm just going to put it on and stick it with the tape like this, and then I'm going to spray it. The template is in place, the spray paint is ready, so I'm going to spray the dark gray blotches on the wings. I painted the dark gray blotches on top of the wings and I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. There's a bit of overspray here and some more here, but I can take care of that with some sandpaper and some washes. The contrast is too dark and it's too glossy, but I plan to take care of those during weathering. This marks the end of the basic painting of the F-18. I don't recommend this as a long-term technique. The airbrush is a much better and more versatile tool for serious model building. I'm just trying to show that it's possible to get decent results with minimal equipment, which could be helpful for beginners. This marks the end of this episode. In the next episode, I'll be covering weathering and final detailing. Until then, take care and have a great week.